Hey there, pirates. Welcome aboard the Anime No Me channel. Yes, Goldie Roger is alive and this has been hidden until now. What would Luffy's reaction be upon discovering this? Imagine the craziness of Luffy arriving at Laugh Tale, just like Roger did in chapter 967, and finding the Pirate King himself waiting, with a crooked smile and his hat tilted saying, "Hey kid, took you long enough. I've been waiting for you." Roger, publicly executed in Logtown in chapter 0, laughing as the blade fell, could have faked his death using a genius trick. Maybe the Opope no Mi to swap bodies like Law does in chapter 504, or a plan orchestrated with allies like Rayleigh, who has been hiding secrets since Sabaody in chapter 507. If Roger were alive, hidden somewhere remote in the Grand Line, maybe on a floating island like Scipia from chapter 261, or in a lost kingdom like God Valley revealed in chapter 1095, he would be watching the world, waiting for the right one he mentioned to Odin in chapter 968, the heir of Joy Boy, who awakens the Hito Hito no Mi, model Nika, just like Luffy does in chapter 1043 with the echoes of liberation drums. Why would Roger do this? His execution in chapter 0 was the spark of the Great Pirate Era, inspiring thousands to set sail after the One Piece. But what if it was actually a plan to destabilize the world government? Just like Imu and the Gorosei fear in chapter 1085, Roger, knowing about the Void Century and the Great Kingdom that Vegapunk reveals in chapter 1115 as an advanced civilization destroyed by 20 kingdoms, could have faked his death to plant seeds of rebellion, hiding to subtly guide the world, just like Shanks balances the Yonkos in chapter 957. If alive, Roger would be on a secret island, maybe with allies like the Giants of Elbaf in chapter 1158, where ancient legends could protect him, or even infiltrating Mary Jaweiss, using a hockey disguise mastered by Rayleigh in chapter 597 to go unnoticed. Fun to imagine him with white beard and scars, living as a hermit, laughing while reading newspapers about Luffy's feats, like the defeat of Kaido in chapter 1049, thinking, "This brat is exactly what I hoped for. Time to get back in the game." How would this revelation happen? Luffy, upon deciphering the final poneglyph with Robin in the style of chapter 818 in Zoo, would hear a familiar laugh echoing, and Roger would emerge from the shadows, explaining that his death was a bluff to force the government to reveal its weaknesses, like Imu's empty throne in chapter 906. Roger could have used the Ope Ope no Mi for an immortality surgery in chapter 765, like Doflamingo plans, or a hidden One Piece power he discovered in chapter 968, allowing him to die publicly, but live in secret, waiting for the reincarnated Joy Boy that Zunesha recognizes in Luffy in chapter 1046. The motives would be noble, protecting the secret of the Void Century, like the world sinking revealed by Vegapunk in chapter 1115, and guiding the right heir, preventing the power from falling into the wrong hands, like Blackbeard in chapter 577, who hunts mythical fruits. If Roger were alive, he could have influenced events from afar, like sending Shanks to give the hat to Luffy in chapter 1, knowing the boy was Dragon's son in chapter 432, and a D-bearer feared by the celestial dragons in chapter 1085. Hidden, Roger would avoid government hunting, which saw him as the greatest threat after finding the One Piece, but alive, he could train Luffy in Gear 5 in chapter 1045, teaching supreme haki that cracks the sky like in the duel with Whitebeard in chapter 966. Fun to imagine Roger with his loud laugh saying, "Kid, you're like me, but with rubber. Let's laugh at the world together." The reasons to stay hidden would be strategic. If revealed early, Imu would hunt him with demonic powers in chapter 1085, or Blackbeard would steal his strength like he did with Whitebeard in chapter 577. Alive, Roger would be the ultimate mentor, justifying his weight in chapter 968. And his revelation would be the climax with Luffy shouting, "Roger alive! Let's celebrate with meat and kick the government's butt." Why would this be possible? Roger's execution in chapter 0 was public, but no body was shown afterward, as Oda loves ambiguities, like Sabo dead in chapter 589, but alive in chapter 744. In chapter 1114, Vegapunk says, "Devil fruits are manifested desires." Roger could have had a secret immortality fruit, or used the Opie Opie to swap with a double, like Law's swaps in chapter 504. He hides to orchestrate the era, influencing through Shanks, who balances the world in chapter 434, and waiting for Luffy, the Joy Boy, who awakens the liberation drums in Chapter 1043. It would be insane to see Roger, alive and laughing, joining Luffy's fleet against Emu, with his ace sword cutting shadows in Chapter 1085, saying, "I faked my death to see this, a free world." The Navy's reaction would be chaos. Akainu, who hunted Roger, would explode in Chapter 793 style, shouting, "Roger alive? Absolute justice doesn't allow ghosts." Emu, on the empty throne, would feel fear, like fearing Nika in Chapter 1044, knowing that a live Roger would unite pirates against the government. Blackbeard would laugh, "The king's back! Time to steal his throne!" But for Luffy, it would be joy. "Roger, let's eat meat and find the One Piece together." This theory is awesome because it explains mysteries like Roger's laugh in Chapter 968, suggesting he knew of a bigger plan and why he surrendered, to hide and wait for the heir. Why would Roger hide? The reasons would be multiple. First, to protect the One Piece, as he tells Whitebeard in Chapter 576 that he waits for the right one. Alive, he would prevent villains like Blackbeard from forcing him to reveal the treasure. Second, to manipulate the era. His death in Chapter 0 inspired pirates, weakening the government over the years, as seen in the Great Era. Third, health. Roger was terminally ill in Chapter 966. Maybe a secret cure in the Great Kingdom in Chapter 1. 1115 kept him alive but hidden to avoid hunting. Fourth, a plan against Emu, knowing the empty throne. In Chapter 1085, Roger could be gathering forces secretly, like the Giants of Elbaf in Chapter 1158, waiting for Luffy as Joy Boy. It would be epic to see Roger alive, revealing secrets of the Void Century, like the world's sinking in Chapter 1115, and helping Luffy use Nika against Emu's shadows. His eternal laugh would signal that the king never died. He just waited for the show to begin. Ha ha ha, Roger, you're alive? That's awesome. Let's eat meat and tell stories. This initial reaction would be pure Luffy essence. Innocent, joyful, and without a hint of doubt. In Chapter 1043, when Zunesha confirms he is Joy Boy, Luffy laughs and accepts his destiny without hesitation, discovering that Roger, the man who inspired his journey in Chapter 1 by giving the hat to Shanks, faked his death, would be like receiving a surprise gift. He wouldn't question the how. Maybe Roger used a mythical fruit or a hockey trick, like Rayleigh hiding his presence in Chapter 507, but would focus on the cool part of it all. Luffy would run to hug Roger, shouting, "You're the Pirate King. Tell me about the One Piece. Is it an endless feast?" His excitement would be contagious, like in Chapter 1045 with Gear 5, turning a serious moment into a party, with the crew astonished as Luffy and Roger laugh together, echoing Roger's laugh in Laugh Tale in Chapter 968. But after the initial laughter, Luffy might feel a twinge of confusion and even anger, like when he discovers betrayals or lies that hurt friends. In Chapter 576, Ace's death breaks him, finding out that Roger, who died inspiring the era in Chapter 0, had been alive all along, could make Luffy pause, scratching his head. "Why did you hide? So many people suffered because of your death. I wanted to meet you." This would be deep, showing Luffy's growth from the naive boy in Chapter 1, who idolized Shanks and Roger, to the mature Yonko in Chapter 1058, who understands the weight of choices. He could confront Roger, eyes serious like in Chapter 398 when saving Robin. "Why did you fake your death? To wait for me? That's selfish." But Roger, with his booming laugh, would explain the plan. Maybe to destabilize the world government, like in Chapter 1115, where Vegapunk reveals the world sinking due to ancient wars, and Luffy, always quick to forgive, like with Bellamy in Chapter 223, would laugh again. "Ha ha ha, you're clever! Let's take down the celestial dragons together." Luffy's reaction would also bring classic One Piece humor. He might ask Roger to teach him tricks, like in Chapter 597 with Rayleigh, "Teach me that supreme haki, I want to cut the sky like you." Or more like Luffy, he might ask for food. "You're alive? Let's celebrate with meat. Tell me about the One Piece while I eat." This lightness would balance the dark secret, like in Chapter 1044, when he awakens Nika laughing at death. Zoro, always practical, might growl, "Captain, focus! If he's alive, let's use him against Emu." Sanji would light a cigarette. "A living king? I'll cook a royal feast." But Luffy, with his pure heart, would embrace the legacy, saying, "Roger, you're my hero. Alive or dead, we'll be free." This discovery would shake Luffy emotionally, connecting to his family trauma. In Chapter 576, he loses Ace. Roger being alive would feel like gaining a pirate grandfather, filling a void, but also prompting the question, why didn't you help more people? Like in Chapter 589 with Sabo, Luffy would laugh and move forward, using the revelation to fuel his fight against Imu in Chapter 1085. He could see Roger as a mentor, like Rayleigh in Chapter 597, learning hockey that can crack the sky, elevating his Gear 5 in Chapter 1045 to levels that combine laughter with legendary strikes. Why would this be epic? Because Luffy's reaction, laughter, confusion, acceptance, humanizes the hero, like in Chapter 1057 post-Wano, when he reflects on loss. A living Roger would hide noble reasons. Maybe a terminal illness in Chapter 966 forced him to fake death to inspire the era. Or a plan with Dragon in Chapter 1160 to unite forces against the government. Just as the D survive in hiding in Chapter 1085, Roger could have used a similar trick. Maybe the Ope Ope no Mi for immortality in Chapter 765, or Haki to fake his execution. Luffy's reaction would humiliate the government, which killed Roger in Chapter 0, and inspire pirates, like his bounty rising in Chapter 1058. Luffy's reaction would be at the heart of it. He would laugh at the impossible, embracing Roger as family, just as he does with everyone in Chapter 1001 against Kaido. You're alive? Cool. Let's laugh at the world together. This theory elevates One Piece, with Luffy finding the king alive, turning the legacy into a partnership. Luffy discovering the dark secret of the Void Century that the D hid from everyone would be a moment that could make the entire Grand Line stop, with the rubber Pirate King exploding in a mix of laughter, shock, and excitement that Oda-sensei would love to draw. Imagine the scene unfolding at Laugh Tale, the end of the Grand Line that Roger reached in Chapter 967, where Luffy and the Straw Hats finally arrive after years of wild adventures. Luffy, with his straw hat tilted and the smile of someone who just devoured a feast, deciphers the final poneglyph with Robin, like in Chapter 818 in Zoo, and hears a familiar laugh echoing from the shadows. Suddenly, Gol D. Roger, the Pirate King, appears. White beard, old scars, and a sparkle in his eyes that makes the air tremble, saying, "Hey kid, took you long enough. I've been waiting for you." Luffy, who has always seen Roger as a dead legend since Chapter 0 in Logetown, would freeze for a second, eyes wide like when he sees giant meat, before bursting into hysterical laughter. "Ha ha ha, Roger, you're alive! This is awesome! Let's eat meat and tell stories!" This initial reaction would be pure Luffy essence. Innocent, joyful, and without a hint of doubt. In Chapter 1043, when Zunesha confirms he is Joy Boy, Luffy laughs and accepts his destiny without hesitation, discovering that Roger, the man who inspired his journey in Chapter 1 by giving the hat to Shanks, faked his death, would be like receiving a surprise gift. He wouldn't question the how. Maybe Roger used a mythical fruit or hockey trick, like Rayleigh hiding his presence in Chapter 507, but would focus on the cool part of it all. Luffy would run to hug Roger, shouting, "You're the Pirate King! Tell me about the One Piece. Is it an endless feast?" His excitement would be contagious, like in Chapter 1045 with Gear 5, turning a serious moment into a party, with the crew astonished as Luffy and Roger laugh together, echoing Roger's laugh in Laugh Tale in Chapter 968. But after the initial laughter, Luffy might feel a twinge of confusion and even anger, like when he discovers betrayals or lies that hurt friends. In Chapter 576, Ace's death breaks him, finding out that Roger, who died inspiring the era in Chapter 0, had been alive all along, could make Luffy pause, scratching his head. "Why did you hide? So many people suffered because of your death. I wanted to meet you." This would be deep, showing Luffy's growth from the naive boy in Chapter 1, who idolized Shanks and Roger, to the mature Yonko in Chapter 1058, who understands the weight of choices. He could confront Roger, eyes serious like in Chapter 398 when saving Robin. "Why did you fake your death? To wait for me? That's selfish." But Roger, with his booming laugh, would explain the plan. Maybe to destabilize the world government, like in Chapter 1115, where Vegapunk reveals the world sinking due to ancient wars. And Luffy, always quick to forgive, like with Bellamy in Chapter 223, would laugh again. "Ha ha ha, you're clever! Let's take down the celestial dragons together." That was today's content. We hope you liked it and want to share your opinion on the subject. Don't forget to share the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay amazing.